My phone buzzed during breakfast. I opened the message from my daughter. Just smile and pretend until we get the inheritance. She meant to send it to someone else. I stayed calm, smiled back at her across the table, and quietly texted my lawyer. What I did next made her face go white. Subscribe to the channel, leave your like and comment from which part of the world you are watching. Get comfortable and relax. Let's begin. The buzz was an insect against the marble countertop. My phone, face up beside my teacup, vibrated with a short, sharp urgency. Across the table, Vanessa was speaking, her hands moving in the air as she described a client's unreasonable demands. The morning sun caught the diamond stud in her ear. It was a Tuesday. I remember the scent of my peppermint tea, the warmth of the porcelain in my palms. I glanced at the screen. A message preview glowed there. It was from Vanessa, my own daughter, sitting 3 feet away, texting me while narrating her morning. A flicker of confusion, then the simple assumption she was sending me a link, a photo, something to illustrate her story. I reached for the phone with my free hand, my thumb unlocking it by habit. The message was not for me. It was a thread between her and someone named Mark. The preview showed only the latest line, sent from her device moments ago. Just have to keep her happy and compliant. Once the house is mine, we can list it. The neighborhood is so up and coming now. Patience, babe. The words did not rearrange themselves. They sat there black on white in the standard font of my messaging app. I heard the clock above the sink tick. I heard Vanessa say, "So I told him, that's simply not how we do things," and give a light, dismissive laugh. I lifted my eyes. She was looking at me, expecting a nod of agreement, a shared moment of exasperation with the outside world. Her face was open, familiar, the face I had loved first and longest. I felt a coldness spread from my core, out to my fingers, down to my feet. It was a practical cold, a clarifying cold. I watched my hand set the phone back down, screen darkening. I felt the muscles of my face arrange themselves into a smile. It was not difficult. A lifetime of polite social smiles had made the action automatic. "Absolutely," I said, my voice steady. "You handled it correctly." I took a sip of my tea. It was lukewarm. "You're quiet this morning, Mom. Everything okay?" she asked, reaching for the toast. "Just thinking about the roses," I said. "The aphids were bad last week. I need to tend to them." "You in that garden," she said, her tone affectionate but edged with a familiar condescension. "It's a lot of work for some flowers. You should enjoy your retirement." "I do enjoy it," I said. The smile remained. It's satisfying to care for something and see it thrive. The double meaning tasted like ash in my mouth. She did not hear it. She finished her toast, wiped her fingers on a napkin. "I should run. Big day. Thanks for breakfast." She stood, came around the table, and kissed my cheek. Her perfume was the same one I'd bought her for Christmas. "Love you." "Love you too," I replied. The phrase left my lips hollow, a spent shell. I listened to the sounds of her departure, the click of her heels on the hallway tile, the rustle of her coat, the solid thud of the front door closing. The house settled into a silence that was different from the quiet of moments before. This silence was aware, complicit. I did not move. I examined the kitchen. The yellow walls William had helped me paint, the stove where I'd cooked 1,000 meals for my family, the table where we'd done homework, held birthday parties, planned a funeral. It was all the same, yet every object seemed to have shifted a millimeter, now viewed through a new, colder lens. Compliant. The word echoed. She viewed my peace as compliance, my contentment as passivity. My home, our home, was already hers in her mind, a future line item on a real estate spreadsheet shared with a man named Mark, a pressure built behind my eyes. I closed them. I did not cry. Crying was for a loss, and I had not lost anything yet. I had, in fact, gained critical information. The gift of truth, however brutal, is still a gift. William used to say that. He was a high school history teacher. He believed in facts, even the unpleasant ones. I stood. My legs were steady. I carried my cup and plate to the sink, rinsed them, placed them in the dishwasher. I wiped the already clean counter. Methodical, precise movements held the cold at bay, gave it a channel. Action was required, not reaction, action. I walked to the back door, slid it open, and stepped onto the patio. The spring air was mild. My rose bushes lined the far fence, a tangle of green and the promising tight fists of new buds. I took the watering can from its hook, not because the roses needed water, but because I needed a prop, a reason to be outside, alone. As I moved along the row, pretending to inspect leaves, my mind worked with a sharp, unfamiliar clarity. The pain was there, a raw, wounded thing, but I compartmentalized it. I placed it in a room and shut the door. What remained was a series of practical questions. How long had she thought this? Was it just the house? Or did her plans extend to my savings, the life insurance? Who was Mark? A fiancé? A business partner? The specifics mattered less than the central, undeniable fact. My daughter was waiting for me to die so she could profit. The humiliation was profound, not for me, but for her, for the smallness of her character. I had raised her to be independent, to build her own life. I had supported every one of her ambitions, and in return, she saw me as an obstacle, a vessel holding an asset she felt entitled to. Her love, it seemed, had a contingency clause. I finished with the roses. My hands were dry from the clay of the pot, the faint smell of soil on my skin. I looked back at the house. It was a good house. It held memories of love and laughter and hard times weathered together. It was not a prize to be won. It was a life, my life. A plan did not fully form then, only a decision. The decision to stop being compliant, the decision to take control of the narrative of my own life and my own death. Vanessa had shown me her hand. She believed the game was simple, the outcome inevitable. She had forgotten that I taught her to play chess. I went back inside. I washed my hands at the kitchen sink. I picked up my phone from the counter. The screen lit up, innocent. I opened the messaging app again and navigated to Vanessa's contact. I did not reread the text. I already had it memorized. Instead, I took a screenshot. I saved it to a private folder I had never needed before. Then I opened my email. I typed a brief, calm message to Mr. Jenkins. We had not spoken in over a year since the final tidying of William's estate. I asked if he had time for a consultation later in the week regarding a review of my will. I said it was a routine matter. That was true, in a way. I hit send. The response came within 10 minutes. He was available Thursday at 2. I confirmed. Then I put the phone away. I had a book club meeting that afternoon. I needed to change my clothes. The day, as they say, went on. I moved through it. I spoke to my friends about the novel, a mystery set in Cornwall. I nodded and contributed my thoughts on the protagonist's motivations. All the while, in the sealed room of my mind, the new reality settled. The foundation of my world had cracked, but I was still standing on it. I would have to be very careful where I place my weight from now on. The 2 days between sending the email and walking into the offices of Jenkins & Sons passed with a strange, suspended quality. I performed my routines. I grocery shopped. I attended my book club, where the discussion of the Cornish mystery seemed frivolous, a puzzle manufactured for amusement. My own mystery was rooted in a betrayal that felt both banal and profound. I did not sleep well. The image of the text message would appear behind my eyelids in the dark. Compliant. I repeated the word to myself, not to stir emotion, but to harden my resolve. It was my catalyst. Thursday arrived, overcast. I dressed with care. A charcoal gray pantsuit, a simple pearl necklace William had given me for our 30th anniversary. I wanted to project competence, not vulnerability. The law office was in the older part of downtown, on the second floor of a brick building with a wide wooden staircase. I knew the way. I had been here with William to draft our wills, a somber but practical task we'd tackled together, viewing it as an act of responsibility. That was before his illness simplified everything, leaving only me and the documents we had signed. The reception area smelled of lemon polish and old paper. The same heavy, leather-bound legal tomes lined the shelves. Miss Hargrove, Mr. Jenkins's secretary for the last 40 years, looked up from her typewriter. Her eyes softened in recognition. "Mrs. Beaumont, it's good to see you. I'm so sorry again for your loss." "Thank you, Miss Hargrove. It's good to see you, too." My voice was even. The condolences, once a raw wound, were now a familiar ritual. "He's expecting you. Go right in." I opened the oak door to his office. It was a room out of time. Dark wood paneling, a green-shaded brass lamp on the desk, shelves crammed with files. Mr. Jenkins rose from his high-backed chair. He was a tall, thin man, his hair a fine white cloud, his suit impeccably pressed, but of an older cut. His handshake was dry and firm. "Eleanor, please sit." He gestured to the client chair, its leather worn smooth. He did not return to his seat behind the desk, a barrier of authority, but instead took the chair beside mine, angling it towards me. It was a small gesture of respect. "How are you managing?" "I am well, Robert. Thank you for seeing me on short notice." "Of course. You said it was about your will." He folded his hands in his lap, his gaze attentive but not pressing. I opened my handbag, a structured leather one I used for important appointments. I withdrew my phone. I had prepared. The screenshot was already on the screen. I did not speak. I simply handed him the device. He took it, balanced his reading glasses on his nose, and looked. His expression did not change. He was a man who had spent a lifetime absorbing shocking information without flinching. He read the message once, then again. He lowered the phone to his lap. "This is from Vanessa's phone, to a Mark." "It is. I saw it appear on my screen Tuesday morning. She was sitting at my kitchen table telling me about her workday. She sent this while speaking to me. And the meaning is clear to you." "It is. The house is an asset she is waiting to acquire. My state of mind is an obstacle to be managed. Compliant." I heard the ice in my own voice. It was not directed at him. He nodded slowly. He handed the phone back. "This is a painful discovery." "It is a discovery," I corrected. "The pain is a separate matter. I am here to address the practical implications of the discovery." A faint approving glint touched his eyes. He had always respected William's clear-headedness. He seemed to see it now in me. "Very well. Let us discuss the practicalities. Your current will, drafted with William, leaves your entire estate to Vanessa, with a series of small bequests to your church and the Library Association. It is straightforward." "What constitutes the estate? I need a full accounting, not as a mother, but as a client." He stood, moved to a filing cabinet, and retrieved a folder. He opened it before me. "The primary asset is the house on Elm Street. Current market value approximately $450,000. You have a savings account with $128,000, a money market fund with $60,000, your IRA, and the life insurance policy from Williams Teaching Union, which names you as the sole beneficiary. That is $250,000. I looked at the numbers. They were not just figures. They were decades of work, of saving, of a teacher's salary carefully stretched, of a librarian's pension. They were security. They were, in Vanessa's eyes, a future condo listing. "Has Vanessa contacted you about my will or about probate?" He did not hesitate. His ethical code was absolute. "Yes, approximately 6 weeks ago. She called ostensibly to understand the process after your passing. She asked specific questions about timelines for accessing funds, about whether the house could be sold before probate was fully closed, about the liquidity of the other assets. I found the questions unusually precise for a grieving daughter not facing an imminent loss. I advised her that such matters were between you and your executor, and that her focus should be on your well-being. She was not pleased. There it was. Corroboration. Her planning was not a momentary lapse. It was a campaign. The coldness in my chest solidified into something usable, like a tool pulled from a freezer. "I want to change my will," I said. "That is your right. What are your thoughts?" I had spent the 2 nights thinking. The anger had been a fire, but I had used its heat to forge a plan. "She will get the house," I said. "The physical structure. It is what she seems to covet most, but not the contents, not the proceeds, just the structure." Mr. Jenkins made a note. "We can specify that. The house, unencumbered, transfers to her. The contents, furnishings, personal effects can be disposed of separately by the estate." "Good. The life insurance policy. I want to change the beneficiary, not to her. I want to establish a fund, the Beaumont Literacy Foundation. The details can be worked out, but its purpose would be to provide books and resources for adult learners and children in this community, in William's name." He looked up. "A charitable foundation. That is a significant undertaking. It would require trustees. I have people in mind, from my book club, from the library board, ethical people. I was thinking of Sarah, the retired school principal, and Ben from the Historical Society. The bulk of my savings and the IRA would seed this foundation. A portion, say $20,000, can be left to Vanessa, a gesture, but not the means. And the rest? The community garden on Pine Street. I want a trust established to maintain it in perpetuity. For water, tools, plants, a simple fund." He wrote, his pen scratching efficiently, "This is a complete restructuring. It redirects the majority of your wealth away from your sole heir." "Heir is a title bestowed by biology," I said. "Steward is a title earned by character. She has not earned the role of steward." He leaned back, steepling his fingers. "She will contest this when she learns of it. She will argue undue influence or lack of capacity. I am of sound mind. You are my witness. I will submit to an independent medical evaluation if you recommend it. Today, my decision is based on clear evidence of her intent." I gestured to the phone. "That is not the thinking of a caring beneficiary. It is the thinking of a speculator." "I agree. My concern is for your peace. A contested will can be a lengthy, ugly process. Then we must ensure she does not contest it until it is too late for her to contest anything." I met his gaze. "We must make the changes in absolute secrecy, and I must behave as if nothing has changed. She must believe her plan is on track. I will continue to be the happy and compliant mother. That is my role. Meanwhile, we build the legal architecture." A slow smile, thin and sharp, touched his lips. It was the smile of a chess master recognizing a well-considered move. A counter-pretense. "Exactly. I will feed her concerns, subtly. Let her believe I am worried about money, that the future is uncertain. It will make her more eager, less suspicious. And when the time is right, she will learn that the asset she took for granted was never truly hers to claim." He closed the folder. "I will draft the new documents. We will need to appoint an executor who is not Vanessa. I can serve if you wish. I would be grateful. And Robert, thank you." "There is no need. William was my friend. You are my client. And this," he said, tapping the folder, "is the correct course of action. Justice is not always a courtroom. Sometimes it is a last will and testament." I left the office 20 minutes later. The overcast sky had not cleared, but the weight in my chest had shifted. It was no longer the leaden weight of betrayal. It was the solid, manageable weight of a plan. I walked to my car, a sensible sedan I had owned for 10 years. I sat behind the wheel but did not start the engine immediately. I had taken the first concrete step. I had transformed my hurt into a strategy. The next move was mine to make. The performance must begin. I started the car and drove towards home, already composing the lines I would deliver at Sunday dinner. The compliant mother, worried about her finances, unknowingly guiding her daughter deeper into a trap of her own making. The thought brought no joy. It brought a grim sense of balance. The game was indeed on, and for the first time in years, I was wide awake for it. The performance began in the kitchen 3 days later with the preparation of a pot roast. It was a familiar ritual. Vanessa favored traditional meals, the kind I had cooked for decades. The scent of garlic and searing meat usually brought a sense of domestic comfort. That Sunday, it felt like set dressing. I moved through the steps, chopping onions, scrubbing potatoes, with mechanical precision. Each action was a line rehearsed in my mind. I was not cooking for my daughter. I was preparing a scene. I heard her key in the front door at exactly 1 o'clock. "Mom, I'm here." "In the kitchen," I called back, arranging my face into the warm, slightly distracted smile of a mother preoccupied with dinner. She entered, placing a bottle of wine on the counter and offering her cheek for a kiss. She wore an expensive-looking sweater and new jeans. "Something smells amazing, just like old times." Her gaze swept over the kitchen, not seeing the room, I realize now, but appraising its dimensions, its potential. "It's just the usual," I said, wiping my hands on a towel. "How was your week?" We moved to the living room with glasses of iced tea. She talked about her work, a new commercial real estate deal she was brokering. Her language was full of terms like square footage, valuation, and optimal utilization. I listened, nodding, hearing the subtext I had once missed. Her world was one of assets and returns. I was now an asset in her portfolio, underperforming but with potential. "And how are you, Mom? Keeping busy?" I let a small, deliberate sigh escape. "Oh, the usual. I've been looking over some of the household accounts lately. It's a bit daunting, to be honest." Her posture shifted almost imperceptibly. She leaned forward slightly. "Daunting? Is everything okay?" This was the first hook. I looked down at my hands, feigning mild discomfort. "It's just the day-to-day, really. The cost of everything keeps going up. The property tax assessment came last week. It went up again. And the roof. The roofer said it has maybe 5 years left. William always handled these things." I allowed my voice to trail off, tinged with a vulnerability that was not entirely false. The facts were true. Only my inability to handle them was a fabrication. A flicker of something passed behind her eyes. Not concern, but calculation. "Mom, you shouldn't worry about that. You have your pension, the savings, and the house is paid off. It's an asset. It's there to support you." I know, I said, waving a hand as if brushing away a bothersome fly. "It just feels like a lot to manage sometimes." I briefly thought about downsizing. Something smaller, easier, a condo perhaps. Her reaction was immediate, a slight stiffening. "A condo? Mom, this is your home. It's full of memories. Besides, the market is good right now, but you'd be losing so much to fees and commissions. It's not a practical move." Her tone was brisk, advisory. She was not protecting my memories. She was protecting her future listing. "You're probably right," I said, offering a grateful, compliant smile. It was just a thought, a tired thought. "Forget I said anything. Tell me more about your deal." She relaxed, launching back into her story, but the seed was planted. Throughout the meal, I tended it. As I passed the butter, I said, "I had lunch with Margot from the library. She was talking about needing to tap into her IRA early. The penalties were just dreadful. It made me realize how careful one has to be. Vanessa cut her meat with precise strokes. You have plenty outside of your IRA, Mom. That's for later. Much later." She smiled, a tight, practiced curve of her lips. "Of course," I murmured. Over apple pie, she surveyed the dining room. This room gets such beautiful light. It would make a fantastic home office. Or a studio." She was not seeing my dining room. She was seeing a feature to highlight for buyers. "I suppose it would," I said, my voice mild. Inside, the cold detachment solidified. Every compliment, Every observation was now a valuation metric. The conversation was a dance, and I was leading her, step by subtle step, into revealing her priorities. I asked a question I had never asked before. Vanessa, with all your real estate expertise, if something were to happen to me, what is the process, really, with the house? Is it terribly complicated for the person who inherits? She put her fork down, her attention fully, keenly on me. It doesn't have to be. With a clear title and a proper will, it's quite straightforward. Probate can take some months, but once it's done, the heir can do whatever they see fit. Sell, rent, live in it. It's really about maximizing the potential of the asset. She spoke with professional detachment, but her eyes were bright. She was explaining her own roadmap. I see, I said softly. It sounds very transactional. It's just practical, Mom. It's not emotional. It's about making smart choices. She reached across and patted my hand. But let's not talk about such morbid things. You have plenty of years left to enjoy this place. Just try not to worry about the bills, okay? Everything is taken care of. Her condescension was a blanket she tried to smother me with. I wanted to shake it off, to stand and declare my knowledge. But I did not. I smiled the compliant smile. Thank you, dear. You always make me feel better. The rest of the visit passed in a blur of trivial talk. I watched her, this woman I had raised, with a new clinical perspective. The love I felt was a ghost, a haunting presence mourned but no longer animate. What remained was a clear-eyed recognition of her character. She was greedy. She was impatient. And she believed utterly in my docility. After she left, carrying leftovers she would likely not eat, I cleared the table. The performance was over for today. It had been a success. She had taken the bait. Her focus was now sharpened on the timeline, on the asset, on my manageable worries. She saw a woman slightly adrift, a woman who might be gently steered. I washed the dishes by hand, the hot water scalding my skin. I welcomed the physical sensation. It grounded me. The plan was working. Mr. Jenkins would have the draft documents ready soon. My role was to maintain the pretense, to be the unwitting pawn in her game. But as I placed the last plate on the rack, I looked out the window at the quiet street. A different feeling stirred, one not born of cold strategy. It was a spark of independence, long dormant. For years, my life had been defined by being a wife, then a widow, then a mother. Now I was something else, a strategist, an architect. The revelation of her betrayal had not just broken my heart, it had shattered the cage of my own passive expectations. The next act would not be played only in my dining room. I needed air that was not thick with deception. I needed to do something real, something that belonged only to me. I thought of the community garden, the feel of actual soil, the tangible result of labor that asked for nothing in return. That would be my next move, not for the plan, but for myself. The performance would continue, but I required an intermission in the truth. The need for unscripted air drove me to the Pine Street Community Garden the next morning. I had been a member for years, paying a small fee for my plot, but my attendance had become sporadic after William's death. The guilt of neglected tomato plants was preferable to the claustrophobia of my own home, which now felt like a stage. I packed my gardening tools, a trowel, my gloves, a wide-brimmed hat, into a canvas tote. The action was simple, purposeful. The garden occupied a vacant lot between two older houses. It was fenced with chicken wire, divided into perhaps 20 plots of varying tidiness. Mine was in the back, a rectangle of earth gone weedy and forlorn. The sight of it, my own small patch of neglect, was perversely reassuring. It was a problem I could fix with my own hands. I knelt on the foam pad I brought, the damp soil immediately seeping through my pants. I began pulling weeds, their roots offering small, satisfying resistance before giving way. The work absorbed my attention completely. There was no subtext here, no hidden meaning in the clump of crabgrass. It was simply an obstacle to be removed. I lost track of time, my breathing evening out, the tightness in my shoulders beginning to ease. That's quite the comeback project. I looked up, shading my eyes. A young woman stood at the edge of my plot holding a tray of seedling containers. She was maybe 30, with a friendly, open face and her hair tied back in a colorful scarf. She wore practical clothes stained with dirt. I've been neglecting it, I admitted, sitting back on my heels. Life got in the way. Don't I know it? She nodded sympathetically. I'm Alicia. I have the plot over by the shed, the one with the struggling kale. I remembered seeing it. Eleanor, your kale just needs more nitrogen. Some compost tea. Her face lit up. You know about that. I'm still learning. This is my first year. I'm trying to grow stuff for my little juice bar downtown. Local, organic, you know? The marketing sells, but the growing part is harder than the Instagram posts make it look. I smiled, a real one this time, thin but genuine. It usually is. What's the name of your place? The Daily Squeeze on Maple. It's tiny, a counter and 2 stools, but it's mine. She said this with a pride that was palpable, untarnished by grandiosity. That's wonderful, I said, and I meant it. A real achievement. We talked as we worked, she transplanting her seedlings, me continuing my weeding. Our conversation was easy, circling around gardening tips, the challenge of small business, the best time to plant zucchini. She asked about me, and I found myself saying, I'm a retired librarian, without mentioning the current drama of my life. It was a relief to be defined by what I had done, not by what was being done to me. As the morning sun grew warmer, our talk drifted. She mentioned how hard it was to get a small loan to fix her juicer. The bank wanted collateral she didn't have. They see a young woman with a juice bar. They see risk. They don't see the work, she said, not with bitterness, but with a tired acceptance. I stopped weeding, sitting fully on the pad. William's face came to my mind, not as it was at the end, but in his classroom, leaning over a student's desk, his voice patient. He believed literacy was the fundamental collateral for a life, not a house, not a stock portfolio, the ability to read, to understand, to navigate the world. An idea, clear and fully formed, presented itself. It was not a weapon. It was an answer. What if, I said slowly, testing the words, there was a fund, not a bank, something local, to help with things exactly like that. Small business needs, literacy programs for adults, books for kids who don't have any, a foundation. Alicia wiped her forehead with the back of her wrist. That would be a miracle. But who has that kind of money to just give away around here? It would need an endowment, I said, thinking aloud, a principal amount that stays invested and the interest used for grants every year, so it lasts. I was describing almost exactly the structure Mr. Jenkins and I had begun to outline, but now it had a face. It had Alicia's determined expression, the kale struggling in its plot. That's the dream, she sighed. A fairy godmother fund. I didn't respond. I went back to weeding, but my mind was racing on a parallel track. The Beaumont Literacy Foundation. It wasn't just a legal maneuver anymore, a way to divert money from Vanessa. It was a positive creation. It could help an Alicia. It could buy books for a child. It could offer a GED tutor. It would be William's legacy and mine. Not a house sold to the highest bidder, but a living, growing thing that helped things grow in turn. The symbolic rightness of it settled over me with a profound calm. This was the alternative. This was what my wealth should do. Not sit in an account, waiting to be transferred to someone who saw it as a means to a condo. It should work. When I left the garden an hour later, my back ached pleasantly. My knees were stained with earth, and my canvas tote held a bag of fresh spinach Alicia had insisted I take. The physical evidence of the morning was satisfying, but I carried something else, too, a renewed sense of purpose. At home, I did not turn on the television or call a friend. I washed my hands, made a pot of strong tea, and sat at the desk in the living room, William's old oak desk. I took out a yellow legal pad and a pen. At the top, I wrote, Beaumont Literacy Foundation, Preliminary Ideas. I began to list objectives. 1. Provide micro grants for local small business owners seeking education training, e.g., small equipment, accounting courses. 2. Fund adult literacy and GED preparation programs in partnership with the community college. 3. Annual book grants for elementary school classrooms and library replenishment. I wrote for an hour, the words flowing. I outlined a potential board structure, naming Sarah and Ben in my mind. I thought about an application process. This was no longer an act of revenge. It was an act of construction. The vengeance was merely the necessary demolition that cleared the space for it. Vanessa's face intruded then, her smirk from the kitchen table. The coldness returned, but it was focused now, like a surgical tool. Her greed had pointed me toward this. In her ruthless design to claim a dead woman's estate, she had inadvertently shown me how a living woman's resources should live on. The irony was not lost on me. I put down the pen. The performance would still be necessary. The legal steps with Mr. Jenkins were essential. But now, the end point was not merely her disappointment. It was this list on the yellow pad. It was Alicia's Kale. It was a future I would never see, but that I could now imagine with perfect, peaceful clarity. For the first time since the text message, I felt I was building something, not just dismantling a lie. The soil under my nails was a better reminder of that than any legal document could ever be. The call from Mr. Jenkins came 2 days later. His voice was measured, as always. The documents are ready for your review, Eleanor. Would tomorrow morning be convenient? Yes, I said. 10 o'clock? We settled on the time. There was no need for further discussion. The decision had been made in his office, then cemented in my mind at my desk, surrounded by my lists. That night, I slept poorly again. This time, it was not the image of the text that haunted me, but the blank lines awaiting my signature. I was not wavering. The resolve was a solid block within me, but the finality of the act carried a weight I had not fully anticipated. I was not just altering a document. I was formally, legally rewriting the story of my family, a story that would conclude after my death without my presence to explain it. I pushed the thought aside. Explanations were for the living who cared to listen. Vanessa had forfeited that privilege. I wore the same charcoal pantsuit, a uniform for serious business. The morning was bright, the air crisp. I drove the familiar route, my hands steady on the wheel. Miss Hargrove nodded me into the inner office without a word. Mr. Jenkins stood as I entered. On his broad desk sat a thin, neat stack of papers, a blue backing sheet on top. Beside it lay a single expensive-looking pen. The room was silent except for the faint hum of the building's climate control. Eleanor. He gestured to the chair. Before we proceed, I must walk you through the key provisions one final time. It is essential you understand every aspect. I am ready. He sat, donned his glasses, and opened the top document. This is the last will and testament of Eleanor Margaret Beaumont, revoking all previous versions. He spoke in a clear, unhurried monotone. Article 2, the specific devise. The real property located at 214 Elm Street, including the land and dwelling, is bequeathed in fee simple to my daughter, Vanessa Marie Beaumont. The contents of the home, including all furnishings, personal property, and effects, are not included in this device and shall be disposed of as part of the residuary estate. The house. She would get the empty shell. The structure she coveted. It felt like a fair trade. Her ambition for the physical space that contained my memories. The memories themselves, the essence, I was taking elsewhere. Article 3, he continued, the residuary estate. After the payment of all debts, taxes, and expenses, the remainder of my estate, including all financial accounts, investment portfolios, and the proceeds from the sale of any personal property, shall pour over into the Beaumont Literacy Foundation, a charitable trust established simultaneously with this instrument. He slid a second document forward. This is the trust agreement for the foundation. It names you as the initial trustee, with succession to Sarah Wilkins and Benjamin Clark upon your death or incapacity. The purpose, as you outlined, is to provide grants for literacy, adult education, and small business educational support within the county. The life insurance proceeds are directed here as the primary endowment. I looked at the language. It was dry, legalistic, but I saw Alicia's face in the phrases about educational support. I saw William's patient smile in the section on adult literacy. Article 4, Mr. Jenkins said. A separate trust is established for the perpetual maintenance of the Pine Street Community Garden. A sum of $25,000 is allocated to be managed by the garden's board. Article 5. A cash bequest of $20,000 is left to Vanessa Marie Beaumont. He looked up. The remainder, which constitutes the bulk of your liquid assets, goes to the foundation. Do you understand and concur with these dispositions? I do. There is one more clause I added at my discretion. He adjusted his glasses. A no contest clause. It states that if any beneficiary challenges this will and does not prevail, they forfeit any bequest made to them. It is a deterrent. It may not stop a challenge, but it raises the stakes considerably. A strategic addition. I nodded. Thank you, Robert. That is wise. Now, he said, closing the folder, the most important question. Are you executing this will under your own free will, without undue influence or coercion from any person? I am. Are you of sound mind, and do you fully understand the nature and consequences of these documents? I am, and I do. He gestured to the papers. Then we will proceed to the execution. Each document requires your signature in the indicated places. I will act as one witness, and Miss Hargrove will act as the other. He called her in. The atmosphere in the room became formal, ritualistic. Miss Hargrove gave me a small, kind smile but said nothing. She understood the gravity of the moment. Mr. Jenkins placed the will before me, open to the final page. He pointed to a line. Here, please, your usual signature. I picked up the pen. It was heavy, cool metal. I looked at my name, printed neatly, Eleanor Margaret Beaumont. This was the moment, the pivot point. I thought of the buzzing phone on the counter. I thought of Vanessa's unsuspecting smile. I thought of the foundation's potential, of the garden's future. The sorrow was there, a deep, quiet pool. But on its surface lay a perfect, unbroken sheet of resolve. I signed my name. The ink flowed smoothly, dark and permanent. I signed again on the trust agreement, again on the garden trust. Each signature was a quiet, deliberate stroke. There was no fanfare, no dramatic music. Just the soft scratch of the pen, the faint rustle of paper as Mr. Jenkins turned pages. When it was done, Miss Hargrove and Mr. Jenkins signed as witnesses, noting the date and time. Miss Hargrove left the room as quietly as she had entered. Mr. Jenkins gathered the executed documents. I will have these filed with the probate court for safekeeping. The originals will remain in the vault here. You will receive copies. Thank you. He studied me for a moment. This is a difficult thing, even when it is right. It is necessary, I corrected, standing. My legs held. It is the correction of a course. Nothing more. And the performance? He asked. It continues. She will come for dinner this Sunday. I will be the slightly worried mother, reassured by her daughter's confidence. I will be compliant. The word no longer burned. It was now a tool, a label I could wear because I knew it was a costume. I left the office, the copies of the documents sealed in a large envelope in my handbag. The weight of it was tangible. Outside, The sun felt warm on my face. The legal act was complete. The revenge was now codified, waiting in a vault. But it did not feel like revenge anymore. It felt like justice, a cold, quiet justice that would sleep until it was needed. I drove home. I placed the envelope in the bottom drawer of William's desk, under a stack of old household manuals. It was safe there. Then I changed into my gardening clothes. The soil of my plot at the community garden was now half weeded, half planted with new seedlings I had bought. That work was real. It was progress I could see. The signatures on the will were a promise for a future I would not witness. The plants in the ground were a promise for a season I would see through. I needed both. One was my shield, the other my solace. The performance was for Vanessa, but the gardening, the planning of the foundation, that was for me. The lines on the paper had been drawn. Now I had to live within them, carefully until the final scene. The seedlings in my garden plot took hold, showing small, defiant leaves. My lists for the foundation grew more detailed. The performance at Sunday dinner was flawless. I expressed vague concerns about rising utility costs, and Vanessa responded with rehearsed reassurances that sounded more like a realtor's pitch than a daughter's comfort. The rhythm of my double life became almost mundane. I was the worried mother, the diligent gardener, the quiet architect of a new future. I began to believe the secrecy would hold until I chose to end it. The leak came not from me, not from Mr. Jenkins, but from the human element he could not fully control. It arrived on a Tuesday afternoon, much like the one that had started it all. I was deadheading marigolds in my backyard when my phone rang. It was Vanessa. Her voice had a strained, overly bright quality, like a wire pulled too tight. "Mom, hi, what are you up to?" "Just in the garden," I said, straightening up, my lower back protesting. "Is everything all right? You sound out of breath." "I'm fine, just walking between meetings." A pause. I heard street noise in the background. "So, I ran into someone today. An old friend from high school, actually. Guess who?" I felt the first prickle of warning. I couldn't guess, dear. "Who?" "Tanya Miller. You remember? She was in my debate club. Well, she's a paralegal now, works at a law firm downtown." Another pause, deliberate. "Not Jenkins and Sons, of course. A bigger firm. But we got to talking. You know how it is. Small world." The warning crystallized into a cold knot in my stomach. I kept my voice light. "Oh yes, I remember Tanya. How is she?" "She's good. Really good." Vanessa's words came faster now. It was funny, we were talking about our parents, about estate planning, all that boring adult stuff. She mentioned how often wills get changed. People get spooked by a medical scare or listen to some new friend's advice. It made me think, "Mom, you haven't been talking to anyone about your will, have you? Not that it's any of my business, really, but you seem so worried about money lately, and I just want to make sure you're not being influenced." The question hung in the air, wrapped in false concern. Tanya Miller. I searched my memory. I did recall a tall, serious girl. I also recalled that Mr. Jenkins had recently taken on a junior clerk, a niece of his late wife, to help with filing. A young woman fresh out of community college. I had seen her once briefly bringing in tea. The connection clicked with a quiet, definitive sound. The clerk was friends with Tanya Miller. Tanya was friends with Vanessa. Information, even guarded, had a way of seeping through social concrete. I forced a light, dismissive laugh. It sounded natural to my own ears. Influenced? By whom, dear? My book club. We're more interested in plot twists than probate. No, I haven't changed a thing. Why would I? Mr. Jenkins has everything in order. I used the present tense deliberately. Has, not had. Of course, she said quickly, but the relief was absent. It's just, Tanya said sometimes older people can be vulnerable. They meet someone new at a church group or a community class and get ideas. A community garden. The unspoken words vibrated down the line. She was probing, seeing if I would mention Alicia or the foundation plans. She had heard something, not the specifics, but a whisper. Big changes. That's all a careless clerk might have said. It was enough to send Vanessa into a panic. "Well, you can tell Tanya not to worry on my account," I said, a mild reproof in my tone. "I'm perfectly capable of managing my own affairs. Now, is that all? My marigolds are calling." "Yes, sorry. I didn't mean to upset you." Her voice was sugary now, conciliatory. "I just care. You're all I have, you know?" The sentiment, once touching, now felt like a manipulation, a claim staked. "I know, sweetheart. I love you too. Talk soon." I ended the call before she could say more. I stood in the garden, the phone a cold rectangle in my hand. The sun was warm, but a chill had settled in my bones. The leak changed the calculus. Vanessa was no longer a complacent heir awaiting her turn. She was now a suspicious adversary alerted to a shift in the board. Her probe about influence was telling. It was the first legal argument she would use: undue influence. She was already constructing her case. I went inside, poured a glass of water, and drank it slowly at the kitchen sink. My reflection in the window looked calm, older, resolute. The performance would have to intensify. My acting had to be impeccable. I could not mention the garden friends or any new projects. I had to be the same Ellie, just a little more forgetful, a little more reliant on her capable daughter. But I also needed to act. I picked up the phone and called Mr. Jenkins' direct line. He answered on the second ring. "Robert, it's Eleanor. We may have a problem." I recounted the phone call, the connection of Tanya Miller to the junior clerk. "Vanessa knows something has changed. She's probing for influence." I heard a soft sigh on the other end. "The clerk, Joanna. She is my wife's niece. I will speak to her. This is a serious breach of confidentiality." "It's done," I said. "The information is out. The question is containment. She doesn't know the specifics, only that there was activity." "Your response was correct," he said. "Deny any changes. Maintain your previous demeanor. The will is filed. It is a legal fact. Her suspicion changes nothing, but it may make her reckless." "That's what I'm counting on," I said, and the coldness in my voice was real. A reckless opponent makes mistakes. I just need to be sure my own position is unassailable. It is. The documents are sound. Your mental competency is easily verified if needed. Stay the course, Eleanor. I thanked him and hung up. I looked around my kitchen, the scene of the original crime. The stakes had just been raised. Vanessa was no longer simply waiting. She was now actively hunting for a way to undo what I had done. The quiet, strategic battle I had envisioned was becoming louder, more urgent. I finished my water and placed the glass in the dishwasher. I had a book club meeting that evening. We were discussing a novel about a woman who discovers a family secret. The irony was almost too sharp. I would attend. I would participate. I would be Eleanor Beaumont, retired librarian, diligent gardener, slightly anxious mother. The performance had entered its second act, and the antagonist was in the wings, watching every move. I had to ensure she saw only the character I had created. The real architect remained hidden, her blueprint safe in a vault, her resolve hardened by this new, predictable betrayal. The suspicion Vanessa had planted began to manifest in physical form 3 days later. I first noticed the car, a nondescript gray sedan, parked 2 houses down from mine on Elm Street. It was there in the morning when I fetched the newspaper, and it was still there in the afternoon when I left for the grocery store. The driver was a blur behind the tinted windshield. Most people would not have registered it, but I was not most people anymore. I was a woman waiting for the next move in a covert war. I did not alter my routine. I drove to the market, collected my items, and returned home. The sedan was gone when I got back, but it reappeared the following day outside the public library, where I was researching grant structures for the foundation. I saw it reflected in the glass of the periodicals section. A man in a dark jacket sat inside, pretending to look at his phone. He was average in every way, designed to be forgotten. That was the point. Vanessa had hired a private investigator. The realization was not a shock. It was the logical escalation. Having heard a rumor of changes to my will, she was now seeking evidence to invalidate it. She would be looking for signs of incapacity, of undue influence, of a new romantic partner manipulating a vulnerable widow. The depth of this new betrayal was somehow both staggering and predictable. My own daughter was having me followed. A cold, clear anger settled in my chest, colder than before. This was no longer just about greed. This was an invasion, a violation of my autonomy, my privacy, my right to simply exist without being a subject of scrutiny. I stood at the library window, looking at the reflection of the sedan. My face in the glass looked calm, even indifferent. Inside, I was mapping a countermove. I checked out my books on nonprofit management with a steady hand. I walked to my car, not too fast, not too slow. I did not look toward the gray sedan. I drove directly to the community garden. I worked in my plot for an hour, methodically tying tomato vines to their stakes. I was aware of the man parked at a distance down Pine Street. He would see an older woman gardening alone, speaking to no one. He would note it in his report. Subject engaged in solitary hobby. No interaction observed. The next day was my book club meeting at Sarah's house. I knew the sedan would follow. It did. I parked, went inside, and joined the lively discussion about the month's novel. Through the front window, I could see the gray car parked under a sycamore tree down the block. I made a point to contribute thoughtfully to the conversation, citing specific passages, debating character motivations with clarity and humor. Sarah, a retired principal, even said, "Ellie, you have such a sharp mind for detail. You should be a literary critic." The others laughed and agreed. I made sure my voice carried. When the meeting ended, I lingered, helping Sarah clear the teacups. "Sarah," I said, my voice low, "may I ask you a professional question, in confidence?" "Of course, dear. What is it?" If someone wanted to establish a charitable foundation, focusing on literacy, who would be the best people to have on the initial board? "I'm thinking of someone with your expertise in education." Her eyes lit up with interest. We talked for 20 minutes about bylaws, mission statements, and potential trustees. It was a real conversation, unforced and substantive. The man in the sedan would see two older women talking intently, earnestly. He would have no context, but the tone was clearly not one of manipulation or scheming. It was of collaborative planning. I left Sarah's house feeling a grim satisfaction. I had just used my book club as a stage to demonstrate my mental acuity and my wholesome intentions. The performance was now multi-layered. I was acting for Vanessa, and now for her hired eyes. 2 days later, I decided to end the surveillance on my terms. I saw the sedan parked in its usual spot down the street. I finished my morning coffee, put on my jacket, and did not take my car. I walked. I walked at a moderate pace toward the center of town. I knew he would follow slowly. I passed the shops, the post office, the diner. I walked straight to the brick building that housed our local police department. I did not look back. I climbed the steps and pushed through the glass doors. The front desk was staffed by Officer Dunn, a man in his 50s who had sometimes visited the library for community outreach events. "Mrs. Beaumont," he said, nodding, "what can I do for you?" "I'd like to file a report, officer, a matter of possible harassment." I kept my voice calm, factual. He picked up a pen. "Go ahead." For the past 4 days, a gray sedan, I believe a Honda Accord, license plate number ending in 7K2, has been parked near my home and has followed me to the library, to a friend's house, and here today. The driver is a white male, approximately 40, wearing a dark jacket. He remains in the vehicle. He does not approach. I do not know who he is or what he wants. It is making me feel uneasy in my own neighborhood. I provided the times and locations with precise detail. Officer Dunn wrote it down. "That's disturbing. Have you had any disputes with anyone?" Any reason someone would be watching you? None that I am aware of, I said truthfully. I had a dispute, but I had no proof Vanessa was behind the wheel. I am a retired widow. My life is very quiet. This is out of the ordinary. We'll make a note of it. I'll have a patrol car do a pass by your house more frequently. If you see the vehicle again, call us immediately. We can run the plate and have a word with the driver. Thank you, officer. I appreciate it. I signed the statement he prepared. As I left the station, I allowed myself a single glance toward the street. The gray sedan was parked half a block away. I made direct eye contact with the windshield, my expression one of polite, civic-minded concern. Then I turned and began the walk home, my posture straight. I had just documented the harassment. I had brought it into the official light. Vanessa's investigator was now a subject of a police report. His presence was no longer secret, and his client's actions were edging into legally questionable territory. The car did not follow me home that day. It was gone when I reached Elm Street. The investigation, I presumed, was over. The PI's report would be boring, useless. Subject gardens, attends literary discussions, plans charitable works with upstanding citizens, and files police reports when followed. No incapacity, no sinister influence, just a lucid, responsible woman going about her life. That evening, my phone rang. It was Vanessa. Her voice was sweet, concerned. "Mom, just checking in. Everything okay? You haven't seemed yourself lately." I looked out the window at the quiet, empty street. "I'm perfectly fine, dear. Why wouldn't I be?" I let the silence stretch, a quiet challenge. She had nothing. Her probe had failed. All she had done was show me the lengths she would go to, and in doing so, had given me another tool to use against her. The violation still burned, but the flame was now contained, fueling a steadier, more determined fire. The absence of the gray sedan did not bring peace. It brought a tense, waiting silence. I had won that skirmish, but I knew Vanessa would not retreat. Her investment, both emotional and I suspected financial, was too great. She had hired a private investigator. That action crossed a line from greedy anticipation into active warfare. I went about my days, tending my garden, refining the foundation bylaws with Sarah and Ben, but my senses were alert, tuned to the frequency of impending confrontation. I no longer had to pretend to be anxious. I was genuinely waiting for the other shoe to drop. It took 4 days. She arrived unannounced on a Thursday evening. I was in the living room reviewing a draft of the trust agreement, the papers spread on the coffee table. I heard her key in the lock. She still had one, and the quick, sharp click of her heels on the tile. Her entrance had none of the casual ease of her Sunday visits. This was an incursion. "Mom!" She stood in the archway, her coat still on, her purse dangling from her hand. Her face was flushed, her eyes bright with a hard, frustrated energy. "Vanessa, this is a surprise." I did not stand. I carefully gathered the papers into a neat stack, turned them face down, and set them aside. A simple, deliberate action. "We need to talk." She strode into the room but did not sit. She began to pace in front of the fireplace, a caged animal. "I'm worried about you. Seriously worried." I remained seated, my hands folded in my lap. "Oh? What about?" "Don't do that," she snapped, stopping to look at me. "Don't play the confused old lady. I know something's going on. You're different. You're secretive. You're involved with new people. And then I hear things." She let the sentence hang. "What things do you hear, Vanessa? From whom?" My voice was calm, a flat plane against her jagged edges. "It doesn't matter." She threw her hands up. "What matters is that you're clearly not thinking straight. I had a concerned party reach out to me. They said you've been making significant legal changes, that you're being influenced by people who don't have your best interests at heart." "A concerned party," I repeated. "You mean the private investigator you hired who found nothing, and then the junior clerk at Mr. Jenkins's office who breached confidentiality. Those concerned parties?" Her flush deepened. She hadn't expected me to know. Good. I was trying to protect you. You're my mother. If someone is taking advantage of you, it's my responsibility to step in. No one is taking advantage of me. I said each word slowly, clearly. Then explain the changes to your will. The words exploded from her, the pretense of concern shattering. Her true fear, the fear for her inheritance, was now naked in the room. Why would you change it, Mom? Who put you up to it? Is it that woman from the garden? The book club people? Are you giving my money away to strangers? There it was, the core of it. My money. The phrase hung between us, toxic and revealing. I looked at her, this woman I had carried and raised. I felt the last vestige of my performative role, the compliant mother, slough away. A profound, weary clarity took its place. Sit down, Vanessa. I don't want to sit down. I want an explanation. Sit down. The command in my voice was unfamiliar, even to me. It was not loud. It was absolute. She hesitated, then perched on the edge of the armchair opposite me, her body taut. There is no your money, I began. There is only my money, the product of my life's work and your father's. It is mine to dispose of as I see fit. But I'm your daughter, your only child. Everything you have should come to me. That's how it works. That is how it works when there is love and respect and a mutual understanding of legacy, I said. Not when there is conspiracy and avarice. Her eyes narrowed. What are you talking about? I reached for my phone, which was on the side table. I navigated to the folder, found the screenshot, and turned the screen toward her. I watched her face. I saw the initial confusion, then the dawning recognition, then a swift, sickly pallor as she read her own words. Just have to keep her happy and compliant. Once the house is mine. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. You sent that text, I said, placing the phone back on the table, on a Tuesday morning sitting at my kitchen table while you were telling me about your difficult client. You were not thinking of my happiness. You were assessing an asset and strategizing its management. You saw me as an obstacle to be managed. Compliant. Mom, that was taken out of context, she stammered, her voice losing its force. Mark and I were it was just real estate talk. It wasn't about you. It was entirely about me and the house and the timeline you were so eager to discuss with Mr. Jenkins. I leaned forward slightly. You showed me exactly what you value, so I made decisions based on that information. Yes, I changed my will. The house is still yours, the structure. But the life your father and I built inside it, the resources we gathered, those are going to create something that does actual good. A legacy that helps people learn, that sustains a community garden. That is a fitting use for our wealth. You will receive a token, a courtesy. Her face twisted, anger overriding her shock. You can't do this. I'll contest it. I'll prove you're not competent. I have evidence. You filing that crazy police report. You spending all your time with these new people. You have no evidence of incapacity. You have evidence of a rational woman protecting her privacy and planning a charitable foundation with upstanding members of the community. The police report is a matter of record. Mr. Jenkins will attest to my sound mind. An independent doctor will confirm it. I spoke without heat. I was merely listing facts. You can contest it. The no contest clause in the new will states that if you challenge it and lose, you forfeit even the house. It's a risk you'll have to calculate. She stared at me, her breath coming in short bursts. The power dynamic in the room had irrevocably shifted. She was no longer the powerful daughter managing a fading parent. She was a thwarted heir facing a formidable opponent. The mother she thought she knew was gone. You've been pretending, she whispered, accusation and a shred of awe in her voice. We both have, I said. My pretense ends now. Yours ended the moment you sent that text. You can go now, Vanessa. She didn't move for a long moment. Then she stood shakily, fumbling for her purse. She looked at me, and I saw not love, not even anger anymore, but a kind of terrified reassessment. She had underestimated me. It was the costliest mistake she would ever make. Without another word, she turned and walked out. I listened to the front door close, this time with a soft, final click. The performance was over. The confrontation had happened. The silence that followed was not waiting, but complete. The next move was no longer mine. It was time to show her the consequences, not just tell her about them. The pretense was finished, but the reckoning was just beginning. I did not wait. Waiting would have given her time to regroup, to consult another lawyer, to spin new strategies. The confrontation had laid everything bare. The next logical step was to make the consequences official. The following morning, I called Mr. Jenkins. "Robert, it's Eleanor. I need you to schedule a meeting for this afternoon. Vanessa and myself. In your conference room." He understood immediately. To read the provisions? "Yes, I see no reason to let this fester until my death. She needs to understand the reality of the situation now, in a formal setting, with you as a witness." "I will arrange it. 3:00. I called Vanessa next. Her phone rang 4 times before she answered. Her voice was wary, stripped of its usual performative warmth. "Mom, Vanessa, I need you to meet me at Mr. Jenkins's office today at 3:00. A tense silence. "Why? What's this about?" "It is about your inheritance. Be there." I ended the call. I did not frame it as a request. I dressed with the same care as for the signing. The charcoal suit, the pearls. This was a different kind of ceremony. I arrived at the law office 10 minutes early. Miss Hargrove ushered me into the small, windowless conference room. It contained a polished table, 6 leather chairs, and nothing else. Sterile, functional. A place for business, not family. Mr. Jenkins entered carrying a thin file. "She is on her way up." "Thank you, Robert." Vanessa arrived exactly at 3. She wore a sharp black blazer as if dressing for battle. Her face was carefully composed, but her eyes darted from me to Mr. Jenkins to the file on the table. She did not sit. "What is the meaning of this?" Her voice was tight. "Please sit, Vanessa," Mr. Jenkins said, his tone professionally neutral. He took the seat at the head of the table. I sat to his right. After a moment's hesitation, Vanessa took the chair opposite me, as far away as the table allowed. "Your mother has asked me to review key elements of her last will and testament with you present," Mr. Jenkins began, opening the file. "This is an unusual step, but she wishes there to be no misunderstanding about her intentions." Vanessa's jaw tightened. "This is absurd and cruel." "It is clarifying," I said. Mr. Jenkins put on his reading glasses. "I will read the relevant articles. Article 2, the specific devise. I give, devise, and bequeath my interest in the real property located at 214 Elm Street to my daughter, Vanessa Marie Beaumont, in fee simple. The house, Vanessa, is left solely to you." A flicker of confused relief passed over her face. This was what she wanted, but she was smart enough to know a preamble when she heard one. She waited, her hands clenched on the tabletop. "Article 3, he continued, the residuary estate. All the rest, residue and remainder of my estate, of whatsoever kind and wheresoever situated, shall pour over into the Beaumont Literacy Foundation, a charitable trust. This includes all financial accounts, investment portfolios, and the proceeds from the sale of personal property. The life insurance policy is also directed to this foundation." Vanessa's face began to lose its color. What does that mean? In numbers?" "It means," Mr. Jenkins said, looking at her over his glasses, "that you inherit the physical structure of the home. The contents will be sold, and the proceeds will fund the foundation. The bulk of your mother's liquid assets, approximately $430,000, along with a life insurance policy of $250,000, will endow the charity. A separate trust of $25,000 is established for the maintenance of the Pine Street Community Garden. To you, personally, there is a cash bequest of $20,000. The numbers hung in the air. The house, but not the wealth within it. The shell, but not the substance. I watched as the arithmetic of her loss computed behind her eyes, the future condo sale, the financial freedom she had planned for, evaporated, replaced by a house full of someone else's memories and a token sum. Her breath hitched. This is because of that text? One stupid text message? It was not stupid, I said, my voice level. It was illuminating. It showed me your priority. This document reflects my priority. The house is yours, as you wanted. The rest of our resources will do tangible good. They will fund adult literacy classes. They will help someone like Alicia at the garden fix her juicer and grow her business. They will buy books for children. That is a legacy worth leaving. It is the legacy your father would have wanted. You're giving my inheritance to strangers. The word "my" broke from her in a strangled cry. It was never yours, I replied. It was always mine. You made the mistake of counting it before it was yours to count. She turned to Mr. Jenkins, desperation seeping into her voice. She's not competent. She's being manipulated by these people. This is undue influence. Ms. Beaumont, Mr. Jenkins said, closing the file, I have known your mother for over 40 years. I drafted this will at her explicit detailed instruction. She provided clear reasoning, evidenced by the document you now know of. He did not mention the screenshot, but the implication was clear. I am fully satisfied as to her testamentary capacity. Should you choose to contest, you will be challenging my professional judgment as well, and you will trigger the no contest clause, which would cause you to forfeit even the specific devise of the house. I would strongly advise against it. The finality in his voice was a door slamming shut. Vanessa looked from his impassive face to mine. The last of her defiance drained away, leaving behind a raw, blanched shock. She had played a high-stakes game and lost, not just the money, but the moral high ground. The narrative of the caring daughter protecting her vulnerable mother was now dust. She was just a greedy woman who had been caught. Her shoulders slumped. She looked down at the polished table, unable to meet either of our eyes. The silence in the room was total, filled only by the hum of the fluorescent lights. The documents are filed with the court, Mr. Jenkins said quietly. This is the legal reality. I am sorry it had to be delivered in this manner. Vanessa said nothing. She simply stood, her movement slow, aged. She did not look at me. She turned and walked out of the conference room, leaving the door slightly ajar. We listened to her heels recede down the hallway, the sound fading into nothing. Mr. Jenkins let out a long breath. It is done. I nodded, feeling a hollow exhaustion. There was no triumph, only a severe, quiet satisfaction. The revenge was complete. Justice in its cold, precise form had been served. The buzzing phone had led here, to this sterile room, to a daughter's white face. The path was closed. Now I had to walk forward into whatever came after. The silence after the meeting in Mr. Jenkins' office was not an ending, but a settling. The dust of the confrontation took weeks to fully land. Vanessa did not contact me. The phone did not buzz with her messages. The absence was a tangible thing, a hollow space where a relationship had been. I felt it, but I did not mourn the emptiness. I had already done my mourning in the days after the text message. What remained was a quiet, practical adjustment to a new reality. I continued to live in my house, but it felt different. It was no longer an asset in someone else's portfolio. It was my home again, entirely. I painted the dining room a soft cream color, something I had meant to do for years. I moved furniture. I gave away a set of china I never used to a charity thrift store. Each action was a reclamation. My primary focus became the Beaumont Literacy Foundation. With Sarah and Ben as fellow trustees, we filed the final paperwork, established a small office at the community college, and announced our first grant cycle. The work was meticulous and absorbing. We reviewed applications for GED programs, for a mobile storybook van for underserved neighborhoods, for small business workshops. Alicia from the garden submitted a request for help funding a commercial food safety course. We approved it. Seeing her formal proposal, with its careful figures and clear goals, was the first concrete proof that the foundation was not an abstraction. It was a tool. It was working. The Pine Street Community Garden thrived. The trust fund ensured new tools, a repaired shed, and a reliable water system. My own plot was lush and productive. I spent hours there, not in solitude, but as part of the quiet community of growers. We exchanged seedlings and advice. No one asked about my family. I was just Ellie, who grew good tomatoes. The opening of the Beaumont Reading Nook at the garden was scheduled for a Saturday in early autumn. It was a simple structure, a sheltered bench with waterproof bookshelves stocked with donated books for children and adults. It was placed under the old oak tree at the garden's edge. The ceremony was informal. Sarah said a few words about the importance of stories. Ben talked about William's dedication to teaching. A small crowd had gathered, garden members, a few librarians, Alicia, some neighbors. I was asked to say something. I stood before them, people who had become my chosen community. I did not speak of betrayal or revenge. I spoke of legacy. My husband believed that understanding the world began with understanding words. I said, my voice clear in the cool air. This nook is for that, for anyone who needs a quiet place to learn or to escape into a story. It's a small thing, but small things, tended with care, grow. There was applause. People browsed the shelves. Children sat on the bench with picture books. I watched, a feeling of deep, unburdened satisfaction spreading through me. This was the correct end. Not a courtroom victory, but a bench under a tree, filled with readers. Vanessa was not there. I had not expected her to be. But 2 days before the opening, I had received a letter in the mail. Her handwriting on the envelope was familiar. I opened it at my kitchen table, the same table where this had all begun. The letter was brief, typed, formal. Mom, I am writing to acknowledge the changes you have made. I will not contest the will. I understand your reasons, even if I am struggling to accept them. I am sorry for the pain I caused. My actions were short-sighted and wrong. I hope, in time, you can believe that. I need some space to sort things out. I wish you well with your projects. Vanessa. It was not an apology of warmth, but it was an apology of accountability. It admitted fault. It conceded defeat. It was likely drafted by a lawyer, but it contained the essential words, I am sorry. I was wrong. That was more than I had expected. I folded the letter and placed it in the same drawer where I had once hidden the screenshot. They were bookends to the entire episode. The final piece of business was personal. In my bedroom, I kept a small jewelry box. Among the items was a locket, gold with a delicate floral pattern. It had belonged to my mother and her mother before her. It was meant to pass to Vanessa. For years, it represented a thread of continuity, of mothers and daughters. I took it out one afternoon. I held it in my palm. It was a beautiful object, but its meaning had been poisoned. It was no longer a symbol of lineage. It was a reminder of a broken line. I did not want to keep it, and I would not give it to Vanessa. That tradition was over. I drove to the community center where a charity auction was being held to raise funds for a local women's shelter. I found the woman organizing the donations. I would like to contribute this, I said, handing her the locket. She opened it. Inside were 2 tiny, faded photographs. My grandmother and my mother as young women. It's lovely. Are you sure? Yes, I said. I am sure. I hope it raises a good amount. It will. Thank you for your generosity. I left the center without looking back. The weight of the heirloom and all its expectations was gone. The past was not a chain. It was a story I had now finished telling on my own terms. That evening, I sat on my patio as the sun set. The garden was put to bed for the season, the earth tidy. My house was quiet. I was alone. But the loneliness I had feared after William's death, the loneliness Vanessa's betrayal might have cemented, did not touch me. I was surrounded by the presence of a life actively lived, of work that would continue. The revenge was complete, but it was not the point. The point was the peace that followed. The point was the reading nook, the thriving garden, the approved grant for Alicia's course. The point was waking up each day accountable only to myself, my conscience clear, my path of my own making. I had not just reclaimed my wealth, I had reclaimed my narrative. And in the quiet of that autumn evening, that was the only inheritance that ever truly mattered.